right, good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. It's my first time at ConFoo, so I'm really excited to get things started. I've heard some great things. My name is Manny Elawar. I'm a developer evangelist with BlackBerry. For those of you who don't know what that is, that's okay. Neither did I when I applied for the job. But basically what I do is I advocate the BlackBerry 10 platform to developers, and I'm also an advocate for developers within the company to make sure that the process of bringing their applications to the platform is as smooth as possible. Today I'm going to be talking to you about reaching a new audience in 10 minutes. And I know that's a vague title, so I'm going to put some limitations on that. The first is that I'm going to talk to you about reaching a new mobile audience, because that's the business that BlackBerry is in. And more specifically, at times, I'll talk about reaching the BlackBerry audience. How many people in the room are currently involved in some way, shape, or form in the mobile space? Hands up. Excellent. That's most of you, right? So at one point or another, you're going to be thinking about reaching a new audience and expanding your customer base. And there's many reasons why you want to do that. The main one is you want greater reach because it leads to better things, like an increased revenue stream. I know many of you might be involved in the mobile space for hobby, but many of us are making our living off of this, in which case we want to increase our revenue stream. So reaching a new audience is a great way to do that. The second is discovering new ideas and feedback. When you're reaching a new demographic or a new audience, you might get a lot of feedback or new feature requests that you would not have received otherwise had you not reached out to that new audience. So for instance, reaching out to a new platform like the BlackBerry platform, if you've begun in iOS or Android, you might gain some different feedback because it's a different demographic of users. And thirdly, synergy or incremental cost. The goal here, and what I'm going to talk to you about, is trying to put in minimal effort to reach a new audience so that you don't have to incur a great cost and yet you're able to reap all the benefits. So the first way I'm going to talk about doing that is using cross-platform development, using cross-platform tools that allow you to either write once and deploy many, or to write as minimal code for the new platforms as possible so you can reach a brand new audience without having to do much work at all. Why would you want to do this? One main reason is managing code bases. Anyone in development will realize that even managing just one code base can be very overwhelming when it gets very big and you get into versioning and branching. So what we want to do here is minimize that effort or duplication 4 more times. So if you're reaching out to the main platforms like BlackBerry, iOS, Android, and Windows, you don't want to manage 4 separate code bases if you can use one code base to deploy to all those users. The second is tooling and resources. Likewise, with managing those code bases, you also have to stay up to date with 4 different tool sets, learn and ramp up in 4 different APIs and languages. So the key here is that you don't want to have to do that if you can learn one technology that will allow you to do this across all the major platforms. One thing you do have to consider, though, or a couple things you have to consider when going cross-platform, is performance. If performance is critical to your application, you need to edge out every last bit out of the hardware that you can. Cross-platform technologies might not be suitable for you because some of them aren't able to, leverage the hardware as well as the native platform can. So keep that in mind. Also, platform-specific features. Say you want to use something like NFC. Not all the platforms or all the devices on a platform allow you to do so. And if that's central to your application, you might not be able to leverage that feature in that specific platform, and a cross-platform solution might not work for you. These are some frameworks. If you're a game developer and you want to go the cross-platform route, these are some great frameworks. One of note that's really gaining a popularity and gaining steam is Unity. Unity is a 3D gaming engine that allows you, with a lot of functionality out of the box, to develop applications quickly in the 3D space. They also have their own asset stores, so if you're not a graphics person necessarily, you can purchase assets that you can use within your game and focus more on diving right into the gameplay. So that's a great one to look into. But all of these frameworks that you see up there allow you to deploy across all the frameworks. Unity is as simple as just clicking build for BlackBerry, build for iOS. And in fact, we've seen many games that have already existed on other platforms that were built in Unity, and the developers were able to bring them over very simply by simply just using the BlackBerry 10 plugin for Unity. By the way, Unity licenses for mobile are free, so you can get started very easily with that. Just download the IDE. If you're looking in the functional apps route, there's a lot of great frameworks as well. You see frameworks up there like Sencha, PhoneGap, Cordova. We have HTML5 there as well. I know there's a large web development audience there, so HTML5 is a great way to go cross-platform. Many of the major platforms are supporting it now, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about how BlackBerry got involved in that. These are some examples. So you'll see some major applications there. For instance, Flixster. They've developed their application or designed their UI using Sencha Touch specifically. And you can notice there that what this allows them to do is create a UI that's consistent across all the platforms, but still allow for the platform-specific features and gestures to be in place. So for instance, at the bottom, you'll see the action bar that's typical of BlackBerry, whereas those action items might be located somewhere else. Sencha allows you to apply themes for a specific platform so that you're able to adhere to the specific gestures that users of that platform will have become accustomed to. Here's another example, Untapped. Who doesn't use Untapped, right? Untapped's a great application. This was built using PhoneGap, which allows you the ability to access native functions within the device, but use a common API set to actually code those functions. So for accessing the media capture, file system access, et cetera, and contacts, all those general functions that apply to all the various platforms or mobile platforms, you're able to just write once and then deploy across the various platforms. Very handy. One other approach that I like to advocate is the hybrid approach. You'll see in the slide here that on one end you have strictly native application development that uses entirely the native features of the platform, and then on the other end, web application development that allows you to build a mobile app that will play within the browser of the device. In the middle, you can develop a hybrid application, which allows you to reuse all of your HTML5, CSS, JavaScript that you've developed, so you can reuse the majority of your application from platform to platform, yet use a native shell as a container for the application, so you can leverage the features that the users are accustomed to, like menus and navigation and actions, et cetera. So I have a screenshot here of an application in Kitchener-Waterloo, where we're based out of. What we've been doing on the developer relations team is we built a shell for local businesses, and we're going door to door and knocking on them and saying, listen, you have a mobile site, you already have a BlackBerry application, just give us the URLs, we'll plug them into this template, and you can deploy this. And what this allows people to do is not just have their mobile content viewable, but also plug into the native components of the platform, like Facebook integration, Twitter, YouTube channels, et cetera, and take advantage of those custom menus that give the BlackBerry feel. So that's an example of a way that you can reuse a lot of your code, but also still leverage some key features of the native platform for usability. This approach is predominantly great for people that are content-based. If you get into more complicated things, then you might not necessarily use this approach, but it's one to consider. The second approach is porting. So let's say you've already created an application in a specific platform and you'd like to reach a new audience by moving to a different platform, and you don't want to do a complete rewrite because rewriting can be painful. Obviously, it takes a lot of time. You might have to hire additional resources and you don't necessarily have the money or the funding for that. So what I would suggest, if you aren't able to leverage a cross-platform framework, is try to leverage as many libraries as you can that lend themselves to portability to other platforms easily, such as C++ libraries, OpenGL, et cetera. So do that if you can, but try to avoid this approach if not necessary. And BlackBerry realized this when we were designing the BlackBerry 10 platform specifically that we launched last year. And so you can see here that not only do we offer our native development option, which is C++ and Cascades for UI development, but we also opened up all these other options to allow developers ease in bringing their existing applications over to the platform. So you'll see there we have the HTML5 option. We also have the BlackBerry runtime for Android, and we also have the Adobe Air runtime built into the operating system as well. I'm going to touch on each one of these now. The first is the Android runtime. So what we did was we actually took the open source code that's responsible for running the application framework of Android and built it into the BlackBerry 10 operating system. We started out with Gingerbread, and now more recently we support Jelly Bean. So if you have an Android application, you can run it right on the BlackBerry device in the BlackBerry operating system. It's not an emulator, it's not a simulation, it actually runs on the device. It's very simple to do. We have packaging tools that are available for you to do it. You can literally convert your application in as little as 3 minutes. What we've found is that over 80% of Android applications that we've tested are able to run directly on the device without a single line of code changed. This is an incredible thing and very enabling for a developer to do and to leverage, reaching a whole new BlackBerry audience in as little as 3 minutes without changing anything. So you'll see here that I have a screenshot of the packaging tool. We built a GUI for you to do this. So basically, you just provide your Android application file. You check off options if you'd like to sign it at that point in time or deploy it to a device or a simulator, and literally just hit package and it will run for you, and you'll be able to test it out with ease. We also have the Adobe Air runtime. So if you write an action script and you have existing applications, we have stage 3D support, and we also have an SDK that allows you to bring your code over and develop directly for the BlackBerry and deploy to the BlackBerry. For you HTML5 developers, which I think is the majority of you, HTML5 is a first-class citizen on BlackBerry 10. So if you have existing HTML5 assets, you already have a BlackBerry 10 application and you may not know it yet. What we have is the WebWorks SDK, which allows you to just simply package all of your assets into a BlackBerry application and deploy it directly into the store or onto the device. And you also have the ability through WebWorks to access native functionality because we've written native extensions that allow you to access the hardware directly. So if you want to take your HTML5 assets but also add some BlackBerry-specific components to them, you're able to do that through WebWorks. Just a quick note, the BlackBerry 10 browser, which is built on our WebKit engine, actually has the highest rated HTML5 compatibility of any mobile browser in the market. So when you're writing your HTML5 contents, which runs on our WebKit engine as well on the OS, you'll be leveraging that high standard of HTML5 compatibility. One thing I will note, Inception Mobile, this is a new company. It's a startup in Waterloo. And what they're trying to achieve is the ability to allow any iOS developer to right away port or convert their application over to BlackBerry and Android. And so you can see here in the screenshot that they have an iOS game that's running directly on a BlackBerry Z10. They're in beta right now. I highly suggest you check them out because if you're an iOS developer, this is a great way to reach new audiences without even having to do much at all. This tool is supposed to, once they've come out of their beta, be able to convert this for you with ease. The third position, or the third approach to reaching a new audience, and I'll touch on this just briefly, is actually repositioning yourself. So maybe not necessarily going after a new platform, but just repositioning to a new audience with the existing stuff that you have. So one audience that I like to advocate for is the enterprise audience, because I work for BlackBerry. And this is just a slide on our involvement in our enterprise mobility space. But what I would recommend to you is, technology isn't the only side of it. There's also the marketing aspect as well. Position yourself to a new audience and see what you get back in feedback. You might be surprised that if you just add a few tweaks or add a couple new features, you might be able to access a whole new audience like the enterprise audience, which if you're able to penetrate into, has a lot of money to offer if you're looking at it as from a financial perspective. So if you're able to gain new markets strictly by repositioning yourself in a marketing standpoint or by adding a couple new features, you have a brand new application that you could access a new audience with. So that's it for me. That was a very brief overview of how to reach a new audience. If you have any questions, please contact me. I have a theory that any keynote speaker is allowed one shameless plug, and so this is my talk that I'm doing later today at 1 p.m. on a development paradigm I call Sense, Understand, and Adapt. So if you'd like to check it out, it's in Fontaine G at 1 p.m. If you have any questions, please visit myself or my colleagues at the BlackBerry booth in the exhibitor area, and thank you.